I'm Nancy Preston. I live in New York City. I am a former Army engineer turned CEO of Milk Money Kitchens. We are a co-working kitchen facility that rents space by the hour or more to food businesses to help them launch and scale. So we moved to Manhattan about 2 years ago, and we're opening 8 facilities throughout New York City before 2012.
Awesome. Thank you, Nancy. And Dena, can you give us an introduction?
Sure. Hello, I'm Dena Caradimitropoulo. I'm class of 81, also engineer branch. And I started a construction real estate development business, and now I'm doing a nutrition business, network marketing nutrition business.
Awesome. Thank you. And when Jessica joins us, we'll have her give her introduction as well. But I'd like to just kick it off with kind of why should you start a business, or why did you guys start your businesses?
Do you want to take that first?
You just want to do it in the same order? Fine.
Okay, I'll do that. Okay, so for me, I just had to. There'd been a fire growing in me for some time, and it just bubbled over in in Iraq one night in 2008. And the following 8 years after I got out of the Army was corporate work and other prep to get to this point.
Okay, and I basically
Dena, I think we're losing you. Okay, we'll come back to you, Dena, once it sounds like you're almost home. So once you are able to reconnect, please jump back in. So Nancy, you said that it bubbled up inside of you, and it was something that you spent post-Army kind of giving yourself the experiences that you need in order to start your own business. Was there ever a point along that journey that you thought maybe starting your own business wasn't going to be the right path for you? And then what gave you kind of the confidence and the courage to go for it?
That's a great question. Let me handle the first part of it. So there's a difference between starting a small business and launching a startup, as I found. And so I am the latter. It was extremely hard. The doubt and the risks are very, very high. They're constant. And so it wasn't until we closed our first lease deal, which was a $4.4 million transaction over the next 10 years. And that was it. That was when I burned my ships. I am now in my new normal, and there's only one way to go, and that's forward. And so there was no recovery after that if I decided to stop. So that was actually a very stress relieving moment, because to have all other options depleted really sets you on a path of determination. So that's really when it became very apparent that this was the last decision I can make at this point that would change the trajectory. So
to a certain extent, it's almost like it was always an option to walk away until you finally just dove in and said, "This is it. This is what I'm doing," and
right,
we're going to make this work.
Absolutely.
Was it? Was there pressure in doing that, and was there any release of pressure in knowing that you were now all in and other options were off the table?
There was personal pressure to really think about if what we're risking is going to be worth it in the end. because we walked away from a very comfortable lifestyle. We were on our way to reaching all of our financial goals that we set before the business started. So I was still very relevant. I was an active engineer and not active duty. I was actively practicing. And so my skills haven't atrophied. I could go back to my firm and work. So when we finally got all our funding and we made that first deal, it was a huge relief that now I don't have to be tempted anymore with this old life and that old path. And I fully accepted that this was my new path.
Awesome. And Dena, I know you've done a couple of different businesses in completely different industries. What was it like for you when you left active duty and when you were starting your engineering company and then transitioning into the health space? What has that journey been like for you?
Well, it was, I wouldn't call it arduous, but it was just unusual. I did the construction business, and to do it, I needed a partner, and I found actually the guy that built my home. I'm in the Boston area. He needed a partner. He needed a financial partner to continue with his work as a contractor. So we partnered together, and we worked together for about 8 years. And I would have continued that. I was able to raise 2 kids, being at home and doing all the schlepping in and around, doing the construction projects on the homes. We did 8 homes together, but it came to find out that he was actually cheating us. Basically, the way we ran the job was that we would, add up all the expenses and then divide, by 2 whatever we earned in the end. And he earned a little stipend every month, so that he could pay his bills and take care of his family obligations. And came to find out that he was getting vendors, and vendors were paying him under the table a little bit of money every time we contracted with them or subcontracted with them. So I guess I got a little disillusioned with the business. We parted ways, and it wasn't a business that I felt confident enough to do it all on my own. I was able to finish the last home. We parted ways midway through our last project together, and I was able to get that finished and then sold. So that was the reason why I stopped the construction business, the real estate development. From there, I just continued just looking, what am I interested in, what am I interested in? And I actually started not to feel well, and started talking and reading and trying to understand, what was going on, and just found the whole nutrition community to be extremely helpful, did a lot of reading, and said, wow, I wish I knew this. I wish I knew this when I was in the Army. I wish I knew this when I was a young kid. Certainly, have been beating the bushes with my own family and anybody that will listen to me talk. So I came to nutrition out of need, I guess, is the bottom line. And it really, really helped me physically, mentally, emotionally, all of that. And like I said, I found a community that keeps me younger than I am, and that's also a big bonus.
What I really like about both of your stories, Nancy, is I read your website and see kind of the backstory behind Milk Money Kitchens and the name that comes with that and why you got interested in the food space. And Dena, to hear you talk about kind of why you got involved in construction and then really what drove you towards this new mission. For both of you, there's very much a sense of purpose and a dream to be achieved. It's not just that you wanted to be an entrepreneur and own a business. What has been the impact of really running a business for you? Dena, you talked about, partnering with someone who ended up not holding the values that you held. What are the struggles that you guys find in managing a business that maybe you weren't expecting?
Do you want to go, Dena?
No.
Okay. So the question is, can you repeat it again?
What challenges do you find that you weren't expecting and actually kind of the day-to-day management of a business?
So the road to the launch of a startup is actually very long, and it can be pretty intensive, and harder than actually running the business. And so far that is my experience. So the funding rounds were really intense. What I didn't know was that raising capital is its own industry. It is completely separate of entrepreneurship. It's separate of business. They make their money a certain way. They have certain relationships. And if you don't understand it, then you will find yourself on the bad end of a deal, which a lot of venture-backed companies have found. So for me, it was that aspect. And then the one thing that was super surprising to me was the lack of support and funding opportunities for veterans. Everyone said, we love veterans. We have SBA loans just for veterans. We have contracts just for veterans. We want to do all of X, Y, Z, and it really is not the environment. It's very hard to make being a veteran a substantial difference between you and someone else. And so the fact that when we came out of the Army and we had some assets, but limited, we didn't have enough to leverage on our own for this startup. And so that's definitely a challenge for transitioning veterans when you come out, that you haven't raised and saved enough capital. And so funding is going to be a problem.
How did you overcome that? Or how are you working through that?
We did the law of large numbers. We pitched probably 500 times to everyone, people with money, without money, our friends and family. And that did two things for us. We really solidified what the model is, because as you talk about it and people don't get it, then you really got to change. Something's wrong. So we did it. We accomplished that through pitching. And the other pitching accomplishment was getting our network built. And so the more people we talked to, the more relationships we started and started cultivating, then people started talking about us more, and people were offering help and offering introductions. And so it took about a year and a half where networking was like my 80% of the business, and building those relationships. And it wasn't until another year where they really started to pay off.
Dena, what about your perspective?
So I guess there are a lot of, I guess the biggest surprise was that, you know, I'd gotten an MBA, and of course you'd come out of there thinking you know everything, and of course you know nothing. So the biggest surprise was how much you really have to learn. And it's not all about facts, it's really about relationships and getting people to have confidence in you. The biggest challenge trying to start a construction real estate company is you have to convince a banker that you know enough about what you're doing to sign a note, you know, to get a loan. And, you know, we're in the Boston area, so these homes are 800 to $1.25 million of capital that have to go into these to build them. And so that was my biggest challenge. It wasn't too hard because I think being a veteran did help me in that situation, because, you know, veterans have this aura about them that they're responsible and that they're rule followers and that they can be dependable and that they'll follow through and all those things. So that was very helpful. And then, you know, having actually built a home when I was in the Army, working for the Corps of Engineers, sort of as a sidelight kind of hobby, also helped, you know, that I actually had experienced it one time before. So I guess that's it.
So I think that's really interesting, Dena, and you're talking about how did you create some experience for yourself before starting your first business. And Nancy, you mentioned the same thing. Yours was post-service, but how you built your experiences in order to set you up, in order to run your own business. I'm curious what tools have served you as you started your businesses and as you run your businesses to complement kind of your experiences.
I went to business school while I was working in corporate jobs and doing some international consulting. So that was, it's not necessary, but I did learn the financial aspects, which I didn't realize I was so lacking. And so it helped me understand at least the language at first when we were getting into discussions with venture capital and with banks. So I can tell them what my cost of goods sold, what my cost of revenue is, and we can start speaking the same language. So some sort of formal education in the numbers, or you can do it yourself now, you can go on YouTube, is a really good tool. Also, some online tools that we use were project management tools. So we used some agile platforms. We used Airtable, which is another great project management platform. And what that allows you to do is just put everything in one place. You have 100,000 tasks to do. Some are strategic and some are just, you got to get done. And they don't go in any particular order when you're in the startup phase. And you can just start assigning tasks to people, volunteers, family members, anyone that wants to help, because in the beginning, I didn't have money to pay anyone. All the money that we raised went to the construction. So that was a huge tactical tool, was these online project management platforms. And I say this all the time, the best tool to get ready for your business and to run your business well is a cash flow statement. Your monthly cash flow statement is critical, in my opinion, because it'll tell you exactly what you need financially to be solvent every month. It doesn't matter that at the end of the year, I have a purchase order for $1 million if I don't have enough money to fulfill it and to wait for payment.
Dena, do you have anything that you would add?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the best tool is a tool that you'll actually use. I mean, I have to agree with Nancy that knowing the finances is very important. You know, spreadsheet skills are really, really critical. You have to understand what the cost of your product is going to be. Like a home, it's a very complicated product. You know, you have to understand all the cost inputs. And when you're figuring out cost, I think one of the biggest things that people leave out is the cost of your time. Your time is valuable. And, you know, at the end of the day, if you make money and you haven't paid yourself for either your product or your service, you really haven't made money. So I would just encourage people to think of their own time as not a sunk cost or something that you have to give to your job, but something that you really want to receive compensation for. And then the other thing, you know, and that's particular to the construction business, but it would also be for a startup, is you have to put together a plan, you know, use a Gantt chart, or, you know, you have to sort of schedule out when you think certain elements of your project will be completed and when they will be started. And, you know, the big aha there is no matter how good your plan is, it's always going to take longer, and it's always going to cost more than you had intended from your planning. But if you don't plan, you will be surprised by what you actually experience. So a good plan. And then, you know, if you're not good with spreadsheets, who cares? You know, just a pad and a paper. You know, you list all your costs out. You list out what you hope to achieve or to sell your product for. You give yourself a salary, and then you decide if this is a good road to go. And same with the plan. You don't need a Gantt chart. You don't need any special software. You know, you just sit down and put a plan together on a pad of paper.
Yeah, I want to underscore that because when you're pitching or talking, you need something to talk about. And so that plan is what the your listeners and your friends and family especially are going to say, wait, how much is this? Or what are you going to do with this? How are people going to know about it? And they start poking holes in your reasoning. And then it forces you to go back to your plan and say, do I have answers for these? And so, yeah, that's a great advice.
What I love that you both highlighted is this kind of idea of, have we really thought through a plan? Like, what is the business plan here that we are saying that we are going to accomplish, and that your time is valuable? I think, Nancy, you talked about, pitching to family and friends and then enlisting your family and friends to help. I'm sure everybody wants to help you accomplish your goals, but they may not be able to give money. So in what ways can they help you start up the business that you're passionate about? And Dena, I think to talk about paying yourself, it's this idea that our time isn't free, and yet I would imagine as you start up a business, you may find that you're working far more or far harder than you would give to any other company. And there may be a period of time where there's not compensation related to that. So how quickly can you turn that in order to pay yourself for your time? So I think those are both really great points. Dena, you mentioned when you were working in the construction business that you were able to schlep your kids around in between working on projects and such. How do you guys manage your workday? How often or how many hours a day do you find yourself working? How do you manage balancing that with home life and requirements to family and friends?
Want to start, Nancy?
Sure. So I don't have any friends right now that are outside of, the other things I need to do. And they understand. So I've seen my family and friends that aren't involved with this maybe one or twice this last year. So everything else, though, takes either money or help. And since the money's already accounted for, we have to build these systems. I never actually counted the hours of the day I work on the job, but it's probably, in between 9 and 12 hours, because 3 hours is going to the bathroom, reading emails, doing, eating, taking showers. And people do not understand how much just personal care take. And this is not even me working out. This is just daily stuff to stay alive. And how much time that takes. And I only sleep maybe 5 hours, maybe 6. And sometimes that's great. And then I have the kids, they have events, we take them to school, activities. And so that takes up a lot of time. And then there's relationship building with my customers. And so it's really, it kind of settled out on its own. So we just extended the kids' school day. We got them an after school program at the end of the day. So they stay at school till 6. So from 6 to about 9, it's all family time. It's dinner, it's baths, it's getting ready for the next day. So when they go down, then I could work another couple hours a night. And this is just the way it is, and it's going to be for a while.
Very good. So for both businesses, I have to say that you're always thinking about your business somehow, some way. Even if you're trying to be totally present with your family, there's always, even in the shower, you'll come up with some idea or something that you forgot to put on your to-do list. So I just have to say that when you're running your own business, you really do think about it a lot. Okay, so in terms of work, the construction, when I had small kids, babies and toddlers, I could throw them into the car. We'd go to the job site. I'd talk with my partner, try to understand, maybe we had to order windows or I had to find a roofing contractor or something like that. And, I'd put them down for a nap, and I could get on the phone for an hour while they're sleeping. So you find bits and pieces of time to do the work of trying to be the mom and also run your job. With the nutrition business, the way I kind of think about that is I'm always, anytime I'm meeting somebody new or experiencing some sort of health thing, I feel like I'm doing my business. I'm either learning by reading an article or listening to a speaker, or I'm sharing what I've learned with, the people I care about and who will listen to me. So I kind of feel like I just do it in the rhythm of living my life. I go to the soccer field with my daughter, then I'm chatting with the parents on the side, listening to their stories of, everybody's I'm sick, or my family's been sick with the flu, and, I can try to interject, how I might be able to help them. You just find ways to, love on people and share what you know to hopefully help them in the course of just doing just living your life.
I'm sure you've heard the phrase, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
I heard that twisted. If you do what you love, you'll always be working.
Right.
Yes. My
That's
current
so true.
It sounds exactly what we're talking about.
Well, right now I feel like I'm not in a love affair. I feel like I'm in an abusive relationship. So hopefully that turns around soon.
Well, it's a lot, your business that you're running. It's a lot of responsibility. You've got a lot of people that count on you. You got to be the rainmaker, bring in money, bring in clients, all that. That's a lot of, pressure. It's not just you're supporting. You're supporting, your employees. So
it's 100%, Dena.
Yeah, and Nancy, as you kind of manage that initial success, getting that lease signed, and then the initial success that you've been having with your business, how do you manage kind of the expectations of you, the responsibility towards your employees, and kind of learning how to produce?
Oh, okay. So tactically, we have a dashboard. And so we've trained our staff on daily metrics. And so we want to hit daily and monthly metrics. It takes us about 1,100 hours rented in any of our kitchens a month to break even operationally. So that means the other 4,400 hours that we have available is all profit. And so when I explained it to them just like that, and we have a tool, which is this dashboard that they can look at every day, and we have a morning huddle every day, then they know that on the 7th of this month, we are at 980 hours. And so what's it going to take from me or my team to be able to get us to 1,100 hours sold if my goal is for tomorrow? So what can we do today to make that happen tomorrow? And we can start having these really great conversations every morning. And so they also know that the day that we get profitable, so the day we break even, the next day starts our bonuses. So anytime that we sell out our hours, we get bonuses. And so if it takes us to the 30th of the month, the bonus is a little less. If they do it on the 10th of the month, it's more. And so that's a huge factor for people, because not everyone loves or wants to be in their job forever. I don't even want to be doing this forever. So I have to really understand what their goals are, because I did not know that, and I did not manage that in the beginning. And I burned some relationships that we're still trying to mend now. So those are those costs with not having that kind of awareness around your vision, that not everyone is as motivated by it as you. And so that's how we do it tactically. So how we manage expectations culturally is by our core values. So the reason why I educated them on the business and the financial figures is because I want them to be able to make decisions without me. I want them to say that if someone comes to them and say, I need 3 more hours today, and this is what I can do, or I can pay you in 2 days if you forward me the hours today. This is not something that we don't have in our procedures. This is not normal use case. I don't want them to call me every time something happens that's outside of our normal use case. I want them to know the numbers. I want them to understand that part of our culture is we always want to get to a yes, and we want to help our customers become profitable faster. So with these, just those 2 core values and the training they get, they can say, okay, let's do this for $20 an hour for the next 3 hours, and you pay me after you're paid in 4 days, because they know our break even is, we've already exceeded it. So, and they know that my cost per hour to produce 1 hour of kitchen space to be rented only costs $11. So anything above $11 is profit. And so when they understand all of these, they can make so many more decisions without including me. And it really encourages them to take the responsibility for the process and for our customers.
That's awesome, Nancy. I mean, it's such a military, I mean, it's what we learned, isn't it? You know, everybody's got to understand all of the details of the mission, so that if everybody dies, you know, there's one person standing, they can still do the mission. And
right.
it worked so beautifully in business. So I applaud you for first of all, just giving them a goal. So everybody's on the same page. Everybody knows the score. And it's such a motivating factor when you get past what your monthly nut is and everybody's in the money after that. I think
that's
that
right.
was very,
we're all
very
in the money.
inspirational. Yeah.
I love it. I'm going to use that.
Well, and what I think is really interesting, kind of, Dena, to your point, is that you know, I'm a leader development consultant, and what we see in a lot of the businesses that we consult with is that how are you assigning responsibility to your employees so that they're not just given a task, but they have a larger responsibility that really empowers them? And how do you incentivize them towards the end state, which it sounds like you learned perhaps a little bit painfully on the front end, but that it's really cool to hear where you've gotten to.
Mm-hmm.
Next question for you guys. What's the biggest risk you face in kind of continuing on the journeys with your businesses right now?
The biggest risk for me is running out of money. We are on a growth trajectory. We're opening another facility within the next 2 months, and this one is not profitable yet. And so it will be based on what we expect in about 6 months. So, but the next location is such a good opportunity, it'll be profitable individually in less than 60 days. So we can't miss that opportunity. And so when we wait it, the biggest risk is running out of cash, like I said, every month. And so the way we hedge that is to make sure that we have lines of credit available to us in case we need it to pay operating expenses. If something happens that I wasn't planning on, and so we can continue to operate. So, but yeah, it's for us, with as big as this venture is, that it's always running out of cash.
Going back to
needs cash. For me, the risk was, you know, in the construction business, there's virtually no risk in the nutrition business that I run, because I eat what I kill. You know, I sell, you know, I don't have big inventories of stuff that I have to sell. Everything is sort of shipped for me. I'm pretty much just sharing my wisdom and sharing these products. So there's almost zero risk, I'd say. The only risk is annoying somebody because you have so much knowledge you want to share with them and they just aren't open to listen. But in the construction business, the big risk was clearly that somebody was not going to pay what you determined you needed to make on your house after you've put all your inputs in it. The largest home I built, the most expensive home, was in Concord, Massachusetts. And the day we had our first real estate open house, you invite the realtors in so they can take a look at what you've created. All of my homes were spec homes, so we created. I didn't build the same house twice. I have eight different homes that we built, which was the wrong way to go about the business. But anyway, the day we invited realtors into this house in Concord was 9/11. Okay, so nobody showed up, obviously, because everybody was glued to their TV. It was a horrible day, and that was actually the beginning of the end of me getting in the construction business. I did do 3 homes after that, but it was the biggest loss in a home because the whole world tanked after that day in our history. And the values were lost everywhere, stock market, real estate, everywhere. It was just a horrible start to a business cycle. So those are the biggest risks. Nobody's willing to pay what you think your creation is worth, and you end up losing money and hopefully learning a lot at the same time.
I think that's interesting from the perspective of how do you really value what it is that you're selling when your passion's involved and when you're interested. If you believe in what you're selling so much, you may overvalue it. And so how do you find through market research or otherwise what a real price is, or if there are no competitors, like how do you go about pricing so that you feel like you're being paid fairly, but you're not seeing kind of through rose-colored glasses?
For me, it's the cash flow statement. I have identified all of my costs to produce this 1 hour of kitchen time that will be available to rent and how much it takes to sell that 1 hour. So when it came down to me figuring out that's $11, then that was it. Everything above is great. And so, of course, I don't want to sell it for $12. So it's also the amount of risk that I'm already in. So how much time do I want to take before all my capital investment is now zero? So that I paid everything back. And so we determined it needed to be about 18 to 20 months. And so with that goal, or with those financial figures, we found that if we get around anywhere between $40 to $50, we can make it. Now, the question is, will the market bear that price? So we looked at other industries because there isn't a lot available in commercial kitchen spaces because we're like innovating the space now. So we found that SoulCycle was a really good model to compare to. They rent you a bike for an hour and they charge you $40 to $50. And that's just to work out, sweat, let someone yell at you. And it's not to actually start new businesses. And so would someone pay $42 an hour for an opportunity to start their own business? And we said, hell yeah. So we put it at $42 an hour. We we did the math and it projects us to get their break even about 20 months. And that far exceeds projections that the bank needed and that pretty much anyone else that's pitching for funding can attest to. And because we don't have speculative value like tech companies, we have actual value that we can measure and that can be vetted. It was very easy to prove out that 20 months was a good projection.
Do you have any, Nancy, do you have any competitors at all in New York
Yeah,
City?
we have a few small operations, and it's small because they're very expensive to build. We had a giant one that was the first to market in New York City. They opened in Brooklyn and they abruptly shuttered last October. So it's been like 14 months because they ran out of money. And they were venture backed. They raised a total of, I want to say 100 million. Is that
Oh my
right?
gosh.
It was a large amount of money, but when you're doing something like this and the way that they were burning through capital, they wouldn't be able to survive, which is, we wrote a white paper on it. And a year after we published the paper, that's when they shuttered. And yeah, so we took a lot of their information too, not for the pricing, but for how we were going to build out our kitchens. Because at first we were going to overbuild and was going to cost us more. We wouldn't be able to get the money that we needed per hour. Like you said, Dena, are they going to pay what we think it needs to be? And so when I learned how much smaller my offering can be and still get the $40 an hour, then that's what we started changing more designs and more of the model.
That was brilliant because, you know, an average person looking at that failure, $100 million invested in the same business that I want to go into, that would scare most people away. But it sounds like you found out what they did wrong and or what they hadn't counted on, and you didn't overbuild and hope that people would come. So that's awesome. That was brilliant.
Thanks, Dena.
What's the biggest lessons you two have learned, both personally and professionally, in owning your own businesses?
You want to go, Dena?
Sure. I mean, the biggest lesson is, and this isn't meant to scare anybody away, it's hard. There's a lot to it. In your head, you have this idea, you have this concept, seems so easy, like why doesn't everybody get it? And why doesn't, you know, my product fly off the shelf, and all of those things that you think to yourself when you're in your own head. So it's harder than it looks. And I guess, I mean, that's the biggest thing I could say.
Yeah. For me, I learned that I make terrible decisions when I am physically exhausted. I started seeing patterns of this, but I wasn't taking note of it in the Army. And then I saw more instance of it when I look back when I was a kid. And so when I'm physically tired, my temptation to quit is like exponentially higher. I cannot think through the problem. And me knowing this now, that when I am just too physically exhausted, that I need to stop, that I cannot make any decisions today. And so what I've started doing over the last 2 years is just take a break. I will stop working, I will watch Netflix, I'll play my phone, whatever, anything else for about 24 hours. It's arbitrary number, but it seems to work because I come back refreshed. I come back with a whole new attitude that the option I was thinking about it doesn't need to be that drastic. Another thing was when I'm really tired and I'm thinking through options, that's when I start thinking about less ethical options. Like things are in gray areas. And then that's like very dangerous because you don't want to start a pattern like that. And so I'm so glad that come to a realization that it's not, no one's going to die. I need to just stop and get my head right and then come back to it. Because when I hadn't, I ended up creating more work for me because I had to solve problems that I created. Like, have you ever had those days where it would have been better if I never got out of bed? Like, yes. The day would have been better. My project would have been better if I just didn't get out of bed today. And so that's what I learned. I'm not going to create problems for myself. I'm just going to take a beat.
Smart. Self-care, so important.
It really is, and it's something that leaders often fail to do, right? Prioritize the business, prioritize employees, prioritize family over self. and then you can end up down a slippery slope. Ladies, as we talk about kind of, I wanted to pull back to the idea of cash flow statements and how you think through continuing the business, particularly like a quarter to quarter over a long term or a day-to-day perspective. What is the priority in how you're either maintaining or growing your business, and how do you think through kind of both long term as well as the short term needs of the business?
I mean, for me, for the construction business, my time for doing that kind of reflection was at tax time. You know, you have to put your tax form together. You have to send out your 1099s to all your contractors or subcontractors that have worked on the job. You do the math, you pay yourself, all of those things that I talked about before, and, you know, you reflect on, was this worth the year's effort that I put into this? And, you know, I did that for maybe for 8 years, and every January, you know, or somewhere in February, when I sort of knew the damage on my tax return for the business, I said, okay, I'm going to sign up for another year. And so I think you probably, Nancy, have to do it way more often than that, but that was my tactic for my business.
Can you ask me the question one more time?
Yeah. How do you manage kind of the tension between the day-to-day, quarter-to-quarter, and long-term cash flow of the company?
So Dena is correct. I'm in the numbers almost every day, and we are consolidating the sales and the revenue and the debt every 2 weeks. So financially, we have to stay really on top of it, because we have the next goal is the growth. So because we're in our growth phase and not the startup phase anymore, it creates a lot more tension between strategic goals and setting yourself up today for those strategic goals and what you need to keep on hand just in case. Because our assets right now are not bad. You know, we have almost $2 million in assets, but that doesn't help me pay the light bill next month. So
or pay your employees.
Exactly. I can't give you a stove. And what cash and net worth of the companies is very different, and they serve two different purposes. So as we grow, we have to balance what our risks are and what the financial translation of that is. If we do, for instance, going to the East Harlem location. So we need a new staff. Do we take some of our staff here and put them over there, or do we need absolutely new staff? Then we need new training, and we're actually going to need to train the staff that moves over. So this is showing like all of these other cascading effects to one decision, and it all has a financial anchor that I need to understand in order to say it's worth that risk or not, or putting my money here has a better return than putting my money here. And so that's the argument I'm having with about every week.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, Nancy, and Dena, looking at kind of your perspective when you were working in the construction business, how do you think about how big you want to go? Like, what's your end goal? Like, is that something that you thought about from the beginning? Is that something that continues to adjust as you continue along the journey?
I'll go.
Go ahead.
My end goal is to exit. And so what that means in my world is someone's bought me, we merged, or I got an IPO and I sold the company. So that wasn't always the case. I thought I would want to grow this to 50 states and continue this ride, give it to my children maybe. And I think the better use of my future time and that money would be to exit, take my share, take boatloads of money, I hope is what it is, and do something else. Because now when you have money and a lot of capital and a lot of relationships, you can do a lot more. And so I plan to start another venture capital firm that helps minority and veteran-owned businesses launch and grow in any industry, where we would actually fund them for an equity share. And we're going to use some of that money for a social purpose. And so right now, what I think that is going to be international human rights. And so we're going to go and try to mediate some of these huge changes in the way we treat refugees, recovered sex trafficked persons that are trying to be reintegrated into a new life. And so those are two populations, refugees and the recovered trafficked people, that we want to try to focus on and build some sort of economic infrastructure around them. Because commerce and moving money really helps change people's situations. And so if they have an opportunity to make something, sell something, and earn a living, then it really increases their economic mobility, like far more than in the US. We think we need so much in the US, and in some cases that's true, but out there, there's so much, it goes so much further. So I think that's where what I'm doing in my retirement years.
I love it. I love it. Hey, if you ever get interested in urban farming, that's my next sustainable farming. I'd love to talk to you, because I do think it's a technology, simple technology that can help deliver on what you just talked about, economic viability for these people. So that would be, I'd love to have a conversation with you just to understand exactly what your interests are. And, you know, I think there are a lot of veterans out there. I've got a classmate who is trying to, on a nonprofit way, help veterans run their own farms, you know, do their own commercial farms. And I'm trying to convince him that he should do it with an urban farm, a tower farm, something that's vertical rather than on the land, just because it's just way more sustainable.
Absolutely. I'd love to talk about this. And see, Jackie, when we talk about networking, this is the result of that. Opportunities come open.
Absolutely.
So I lost the train of thought on the question because I got so excited when you started talking about what your real passion was. Oh, okay. So the construction business, it was never, you know, there was never a way to have somebody buy me out of that business. That it was always a cash flow kind of play, if you want to call it that. The goal was to create cash for my family, and I would do it as long as it wasn't a pain in the behind, and that I didn't get myself in deep financial trouble because I took a risk that was too big, and then it would deliver when we sold on the house. I actually made money and enjoyed what we were doing. We were creating these one-off, you know, homes in the Boston area, and I really loved it because it was creative and but yet also so practical, because you have to run the project from digging in the ground, the foundation, all the way to putting a roof on and putting a very cool kitchen in it, which I love designing those. So it was never to sort of sell it. It was always, how can I just bring money into my family household?
Well, ladies, we are just about out of time, so I want to turn it over to you. Any last words of advice, words of wisdom that you have for any of our cadets or graduates who may be thinking about starting a business or maybe in the beginning stages of starting their own business?
Yeah, you need to start talking about it. No one's going to steal your idea. Just start talking about it. Don't protect it because it will never grow into something. You need feedback. You need advocates, and you need adversaries that are going to try to ground you and say what is completely wrong with what you're thinking and what this concept is. And so it'll only fortify what you need to do in order to get started. But to get started, you need to do something, just anything. Start the Gantt chart, like Dena said, start making a plan and say, well, if I started doing this today, then I might be able to get to this point in 6 months. And then start pitching it, and people say, oh no, that's crazy. Well, what about this? What about this? And then you just added more lines to your Gantt chart to go back and say, And so that's how you start.
So I totally agree with Nancy's points there. I would say do it, just do it. You know, Nike's logo is just get off your duff and do it. And I would also say don't let your family tear your idea down. Don't let them make you feel like, you know, it's not possible to do, or that's a silly idea, or why you when everybody else is doing that. Family can really put the anchor on people's, you know, life. They mean well, but they can sort of mess with your head a little bit. And then the other tip I would say is once you get into something, once you start working on something, be open, you know, be open to what you're learning. You may have an interest A, and as you start to, you know, listen to people, listen to naysayers, do your research, you might find out that B is a better approach and maybe gets you more jazzed up to get up in the morning and work on it. So I would just say be open, be very open as you embark on this path.
Well, I really appreciate both of your time today, Dena and Nancy. The insight that you've provided has been hugely helpful. It's been eye-opening for me, as I'm sure it is for all of our attendees, as well as the people that will be able to watch this after the fact. For all of you out there, both of these women gave a lot of time, not only today, but in the preparation leading up to today. So really appreciate all of that you guys have provided. Would you both be open to any graduates or cadets reaching out if they have further questions for you?
Absolutely.
100%.
Awesome. Ladies, thank you so much. Hope you have had a wonderful start to your new year, and best of luck with both of your businesses in the future.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you so much.